Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel and welcome to our series of best games from 2022, and today I'm talking about Thematic Games. And I love a game with a good theme, an interesting theme, a unique theme, a different kind of theme. Thematic can be anything, of course. It could be, packaging things in a warehouse to fighting goblins and zombies. But I like games where the theme really comes out and is just very much invoked through the material of the game. So these are my 10 picks here for the top thematic games of 2022. Number 10, Trollfest. So I really like this idea of a company here making all sorts of just horror-themed games. And Trollfest is about, it's not really horror, it's maybe horror-adjacent fantasy, but it's about getting the band back together. And in this game, you're getting a band and you're going on tour, but it's all fantasy stuff. You got vampires and orcs and all sorts of things. And it's kind of a silly game, but I just like this idea. You're trying to get maybe musicians of the same type because they work together well. You want as many different instruments as possible. And you want to go to cities that different people are begging you to come visit. It's just interesting, and I think the theme comes out, this whole rock and roll touring band type thing. That's Trollfest. Very different now, we jump to number 9, and that's Cellulose. So I'm a big fan of Genius Games. They make science-themed games, which is a great motif to have because they're both educational and they're fun. And Cellulose is about, plant cells and growing them. So it's kind of a worker placement game with a lot of different ideas. It has some neat things with photosynthesis, and there's stuff in there that I'm not even sure 100% what it means exactly, except there's a book included with the game that explains it. But it's also still a solid game, as most Genius games are. So that's Cellulose. Number 8, let's go now to weirdness here. Number 8 is Voices in My Head. So Voices in My Head is about a guy who's on trial, and the different voices in his head are telling him to do different things. Now, this is not it's not making fun of anyone necessarily. What this is it's saying your guilty conscience. Think of like the devil and the angel on your shoulder type situation. That's what it is. And they're battling it out. And in this game, that person is on trial. They're like a doofus criminal. And you are trying, if you're the guilty person, you're trying to say stupid stuff. And so that's in the game. It has some fun mechanisms too, where there's a little bit of a kind of coin plinko type thing going on. It's very neat, the theme, and it makes me smile every time I play it. Number 7 is Spaceship Unity. When you were a kid, you might sit on the stairs and pretend you're driving a rocket ship. Spaceship Unity does the same thing, because in this game, you are opening and closing blinds to put your shields up and down. You are stretching out the cord of a vacuum cleaner to connect 2 wires in your ship. You're reorganizing your silverware drawer to redo circuit breakers. It's silly, it's nonsensical, but the theme there is on point. I'm amused by how they managed to take regular household items, like a cell phone, and make it a communication device. And the theme is, it's a silly, fun game. That's Spaceship Unity. Staying on the robotic thing, this one does not sound thematic. My number 6 is Turing Machine. Turing Machine, based on, the first computer, is a deduction game where you're trying to find out what this code is that meets a bunch of laws. I think it's thematic, though, because all the laws and stuff are some logical problems, but the actual device itself, you put these in, and they all kind of crisscross all these holes, but only one hole is going to be visible, and it's going to tell you if that combination you put in is correct or not. Again, this one people might argue that this is a themeless game, but I think the theming of computer programming and the theming of the actual Turing machine makes this one stand out. Number 5 is Sniper Elite, the board game. In this game, one person is that sniper sneaking into the enemy base, and everyone else is playing the officers and soldiers tasked with finding this sniper and taking them down. This is a one versus many style game, and I find it to be, great fun, but also very thematic. If you're that sniper, you're sitting there and you're scared because your movements are hidden and you're feared that at any moment they might reveal where they are, and as they get closer and closer, you feel that tension of that upon you. And everyone else, you're seeing a guard get shot, and you're like, where'd that shot come from? And figure out where that person is. And so these things come together in a fun game, but one that I think is thematic. It is based on a video game, but despite not having ever played that video game, I still get the theming of this game. Number 4 is Frosthaven. Frosthaven, the sequel to Gloomhaven, has twice the story in it, for sure. And they did a really good job at tying the story together. The Gloomhaven story, I never thought the Gloomhaven story was bad, but it kind of is. There's like a big world story kind of in the background and then smaller stories. This one has a much more interesting, involved story of you defending the small, beleaguered outpost of Frosthaven as it grows into a city, hopefully. And then lots of other little stories. But the writing for it's very well done. The characters you meet and things are memorable. And I think Frosthaven does a much better job, especially with outpost events and road events, at bringing the theme to life more than Gloomhaven did. Number 3 is ISS Vanguard. I talked about this game this year. What a really neat game as you are going on spaceship exploration, but the story here is fantastic. As you find this gigantic structure in space that these builders built, then you're going to go to different planets trying to find out who these builders are. And as you go through, I mean, when I think about the game that I played through this, I can tell you the stories. I can talk about the people who died, that I'm sad to see what happened to them. I remember on this planet when we discovered this and this sort of thing happened. And when I got this new technology that allowed me to go on a planet and take this next time. The stories that ISS Vanguard bring out are really well done. Number 2 is Townsfolk Tussle. Now, Townsfolk Tussle has shown up on a lot of my lists so far. I talked about it in art. I talked about it in components. But I like the story. Each of the bad guys has a full story about why they're a bad guy. From the deputy who really wanted to be the sheriff to the tourist who's really not a bad guy. He's just like, well, he's confused why you're all attacking him. And then each of the main characters has a backstory to it. And all this comes together in a very zany, old Mickey Mouse style, but with a flair for blood and gore. And I just found it to be very, very fun. Townsfolk Tussle. My number 1 thematic game from 2022, though, is My Father's Work. Now, this game has almost too much story in it. It's all in the app when you play it, but there is a ton. And in it, you are a son of or daughter of a mad scientist, and you and the other players are siblings. And so you play through this trying to restore your father's work. And then when you die, in part 2, you are the kids of those people. So now you're cousins, and then you become, whatever, second, third cousins. But all this has a really neat story. There are 3 modules included in the game, and each module takes the game in a different way. One is all about war. One is about you trying to stop a plague through mad scientists, these sorts of ways. And, the townspeople might fear you. They might be afraid of you. You are messing with the votes. You create things that should be left not to mankind. It all comes through from the components, everything. The theme is just brimming out of this one. What a juicy theme. My Father's Work, for me, that's my number 1 thematic game of 2022. And those are my top 10 games that I enjoyed the theme in this past year. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time.